All right, so our agenda today, we're going to talk about what is DreamBox. We are going to walk through how your student logs into DreamBox from home. We're going to talk about what the student experience looks like. So what can we expect from our students logging into this program? And then how do you support your student at home? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that sound like? We will have plenty of times for you to pause and ask a question, especially because I think our attendance right now is under 10. So we really want this to be personalized to meet your needs. So we will pause. Feel free to send any of your questions through the chat. It sounds like everybody already has themselves muted, and a lot of people are already finding the chat, which we love. So since we have so many DreamBox people on the line, we have plenty of opportunities to ask those questions and get them answered quickly. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and either Bree, Diera, or Ugo will answer them for you. All right, with that, we will get started. So first, we're going to talk about what is DreamBox. What is this program that I am logging my child or grandchild or the child who is in my home currently into? So the DreamBox difference is what we like to call it. It's very student driven. So what that means is your student is the one doing the work. They are not just watching videos, they are actively engaged in mathematical thinking, and they are having a lot of fun while they're doing it. There's a lot of opportunities for students to earn coins, spend coins, while also completing very rich mathematical tasks. So it's also personalized and adaptive. So it's going to meet students exactly where they are. We call that finding their zone of proximal development. But what it means is that all students take different pathways while they're in DreamBox. So whenever they play with the lesson, we basically analyze that data and we determine what the next best lesson we open up is for your student. And that is truly determined lesson by lesson. So their pathway begins to look different than any of the other students in their classroom, because that is true personalized learning, and that is what our learners deserve and need. So because they are in that driver's seat, because they are working independently on this content, we embed a lot of support. So they can click on a button to get help, and we also give them help in the term using like narrator feedback when they make a mistake or when we notice that they need a little bit of support. So the last thing up there is that the pathways are rigorous. So your students are going to be challenged, which is a great thing. So if you ever notice that they're experiencing that productive struggle, if they're really critically thinking, try to motivate them to finish that lesson because it's really going to stretch their brain. And DreamBox is presenting them with challenging lessons because we know that's what's good for them. All right, so how does my student log into DreamBox? So you are going to go directly to your Clever portal in order to access DreamBox. So what this looks like, I have a little video right here. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to fast forward because you use single sign-on. So I'm going to go to the part. There we go, where it mentions single sign-on. Now you can log in through the DreamBox URL, but your district actually asks that you use the single sign-on, which is clever because it's a lot easier for students to access.
Please contact your child's teacher or district IT department. When logging into DreamBox on a computer, you will need the link to access your child's school or district single sign-on portal. When at the portal login page, students will be prompted to enter their school or district login credentials. Students will locate the DreamBox Learning icon from their page of school applications and will automatically be signed in. When logging into DreamBox on an iPad, first download the DreamBox app from the App Store. It is important to note that the app must be downloaded, but students will not sign in through the DreamBox app itself. Students will open an internet browser such as Safari and navigate to the single sign-on portal. Students will then enter their school login credentials, locate and launch the DreamBox icon from their page of school applications. The DreamBox app will then automatically launch with the child signed in. Please note, DreamBox cannot provide any usernames or passwords for students that sign on through the single sign-on method. For questions about your child's SSO portal or login credentials, please contact your child's teacher or district IT department.
All right, so I'm going to pause right there for a second. So I know that was a lot of words, but it's actually very simple. So you navigate to that Clever portal page. I'm sure there are other programs your student is using right now that are also accessed by that Clever portal page, and you click on the DreamBox icon. It's going to look like that lowercase d right there. If you do use on an iPad, I think most of the students use on Chromebooks, but if you do use through an iPad, you're going to want to make sure that you download the DreamBox app, which is free in the App Store. And then when you access Clever, your Clever portal through Safari or through whatever browser you're using, and you click the DreamBox icon, it will automatically launch that app on the iPad. So there's no password you need to remember in DreamBox. It is just the student's Clever ID and password. Now, unfortunately, since DreamBox doesn't have access to that information, if you need your student's Clever login, you are going to need to contact your student's teacher. All right, questions. I want to pause for just a moment and make sure that everybody knows how to access DreamBox through that portal. Give you about 30 seconds to drop any of your questions in the chat, or feel free to take yourselves off of mute and ask them.
Yes, just a question. So this is available for all county school students, pre-K, kindergarten?
Yes, pre-K through 6th grade right now uses in PG County. Good question.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yes,
And
I have a
thank you,
question.
Bree. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, sometimes when I go through Clever, I'm not sure if it's the different, um, I don't know, applications or
Mhm.
browsers, but when I go through Clever, sometimes Dreambox just spins. I have to actually add an app outside of the Clever login to get it to work.
Are you using a Chromebook or an iPad?
It's an iPad because she's only in kindergarten.
Okay. Do you know if you have that DreamBox app downloaded on the iPad
Yes, we had to
to go
download it
download?
outside the Clever because it wouldn't work in Clever.
That's interesting. So I want to troubleshoot that a little bit. Would you mind, Bree, would you mind dropping our email addresses in? And because that shouldn't be happening for you, I want to be able to dig in a little bit further. Would it be okay if either you gave us your email address or Ugo's dropping his in there as well, or if you emailed us those details, if you could take a screenshot or just describe kind of in detail what's happening, I would love to connect you with our support team to make that process a little bit easier for you.
Sure,
Would
no
that be
worries.
okay? Thank you so much. And I'm sorry that's happening because it should be a very easy process and you shouldn't have to go through any other portals other than Clever. So we will figure out exactly what's happening for you. All right, any other questions about logging in? All right, and I love that you guys are taking yourself off of mute. It always feels a little more personalized when people want to talk to us instead of just using the chat. So let's talk a little bit about what it looks like for your students. So what is that student experience? What is it like for our learners? Now, I know that we have a few people in here who mentioned they have a 2nd grader and a 5th grader, or a kindergartner and 11th grader. So there are 3 different learning environments in DreamBox. You have our K2 environment, 3-5, and 6-8. So as students graduate these grade levels, they will graduate in basically the maturity of their DreamBox screen. So in the K2 environment, they are able to, access their little adventure lands. They get to go on these adventures and collect tokens and earn adventure friends. And then in the 3-5 environment, their engagement changes a little bit. So we get them really excited by still giving them coins, but they can play these little mini games. They can collect different badges, and same for 6-8. So don't be surprised if you have different grade level students in your home and their screens look a little bit different when they access DreamBox because it does differ per their grade level. So regardless of the grade level that you support, at the K2 level, they can self-monitor their lesson completion by clicking on the top left. We call this a little avatar, that little icon or person that the student chooses. And if they tap there, they can see how many lessons they've completed this week. Regardless of the grade level, they can do this. So if you have a student who is grade 3 and above, they can tap the side and it actually pulls out. Every time they complete a lesson, they can see this number count growing. Now, something you guys should know is that every teacher in Prince George's County is asking that students do 5 or more lessons each week. Now, at DreamBox, we have really, really great studies and data that show us that students who do 5 or more lessons actually grow faster than their peers who do 4 or less. It's really interesting data, and I'm not sure why 5 is that sweet spot for lesson completion, but it is. So if you're going to support your students at home, one thing you can do is click on their avatar or tap that right-hand side of the screen and just check how many lessons they've done that week and try to make sure that by Friday, by the end of that work week, that they've done 5 or more. So healthy habits in order to support lesson completion in your home. Perseverance. So we want students having a growth mindset. We want them trying every problem and finishing those 5 or more lessons and not giving up when it's tough, because DreamBox is going to give them that support that they need. We also want them clicking on that light bulb on the screen. So when I say click on the help and hint buttons, there's actually a question mark and there's a light bulb that they can click on their screen to get help if they need it. And then if they ask for help or if DreamBox talks to them, we want them actively listening. So the help that we're giving students is actually very purposeful, and it's based on maybe the mistakes they've made or what DreamBox is uncovering they don't understand. We also have closed captioning for your older learners who are readers. And last, and perhaps the most important thing for parents to know, is that your students need to work independently while they're on DreamBox. So our program is highly adaptive. Every time a student clicks on the screen or uses the tool or inputs an answer, we learn more about them. So if you, as the grandparent or parent or aunt or uncle or child's guardian, gets in there and starts answering some questions, it skews the data because DreamBox starts to adapt to meet your needs and not necessarily your students. Students often end up in really frustrational situations when a parent or learning guardian has been helping too much. Same goes for an older brother or sister. So make sure that everyone in your home knows that when it's DreamBox time, that learner should be the only one making decisions about the screen. All right, so we just talked about some healthy habits. I wanted to show you a video of a student playing DreamBox just so you could see what it actually looks like. I want you to think about what healthy habits you see the student using and doing. I always like to mention this is not a paid child actor. This is a student who was caught on a program called Loom, and we thought that it was really interesting and we want to share it with you. While you're watching, it's going to be about 2 minutes long. Feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat or notice what you like about the program. You can share that in the chat as well.
Insert games. What? Can I go down? Oh yeah, I can. So technically all I'm doing here is just adding, minusing, doing that. What? Oh, say how do I do it? Yay. 57 times 50. So what the? This is it. 7. Wait, what? Wait, what? 57 times 50?
You created 60 plus 7 and 60 plus 7. Represent this expression. Try again.
Okay, apparently I did it wrong. I see how. What is this?
I will help you with this one.
What is this?
The array needs to be adjusted to 57 and 57.
That is what? Oh, dang, I have to minus 3. Dang it. Okay, that's 3,420 minus 480 again. 3,200. 3,220. 40 plus 9. Yay! 4,000.
All right, I'm going to pause the recording and continue, but I want to let you know that I share this with you because I love how the student is using a growth mindset. I love how the student does not give up even when he gets problems wrong. He's really listening to the feedback that DreamBox is giving him because that feedback is meant to support the student. And the student, like I said, doesn't give up, powers through, and eventually completes the entire lesson. I also love that the student is talking to himself while he's playing. So our students in that self-talk really does help them power through with that grit and growth mindset. So if you're working with your own child at home or a student in your home, mention to them that it's okay to talk to yourself while you're working. I know I do that as an adult, and oftentimes I think our kids, are so used to us asking them to be quiet or be silenced that sometimes they forget that that's a really great strategy as they're working through a math problem. So I hope that you enjoyed watching that. That was a fourth grade student. So I know we had some kindergarten, first grade, second graders in the room. That would be a very difficult problem for your students to do, but your students would be getting a problem at their level, working on their grade level standards or where DreamBox found that they were. All right, so how are you going to support your student working at home? So it's really simple. So your role as a parent or learning guardian is to support that logging in through the Clever portal and then encourage your student doing 5 or more lessons per week. Now I'm going to repeat the research because I know a couple people hopped in a little bit late. DreamBox has really fantastic research that we didn't do. It was done by a third party, meaning that we can't, skew it anyway. We had nothing to do with it. And they found that students who did 5 or more DreamBox lessons grew a lot more than their peers who did 4 or less. And this was based on those end of grade assessments. Now, 5 or more lessons per week is going to take anywhere between 30 and 90 minutes. So if you have a K2 student, it's more like a half hour to an hour. If you have a student who's in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, it might be more like an hour to 90 minutes, depending on the content that that student's working on. If you're wondering how long an individual lesson takes, on average, about 8 minutes. It might be a little less than that. It might be a little more than that. So if you're supporting your student in logging in and wanting them maybe to complete 1 lesson per day, because that's going to get them to 5 by the end of the week, you might suggest that they log in for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. Maybe you set a timer in your home and you say, all right, I'm going to set a 20-minute timer, but I really want you to try to finish 1 lesson within this 20 minutes. Let's see if we can race, and really encourage your students to work towards lesson completion and not just the amount of time that they're logged into the program, because we found that actually completing lessons is going to contribute more to student growth than just sitting on the program for a certain amount of time. But really, that's it. So one thing I love about DreamBox, I'm a parent of a first grader who uses it in her Raleigh, North Carolina district. I love that I don't need to sit in that teacher seat. I don't need to check worksheets. I don't need to teach challenging math concepts. All of the support my learner needs is within the program. And as a mother, especially a working mother, I love that because she can be independently doing DreamBox while I'm working on something else. And I know she's getting something at her level and I know she's supported. All right, I'm going to review just these healthy habits. So try every problem, that growth mindset and grit. We want to teach all our students to have it. Finish every lesson. Instead of hopping around, try to finish the lesson that your student is on. Make sure they're clicking on that light bulb or that question mark, utilizing the in-lesson support. If you do have headphones, it can be a really great idea for students to use them while they're playing so that the experience is not too loud for the rest of the house. Or you might just make sure that they have volume on, because you saw in that student lesson that I played for you, there was a lot of verbal feedback. So we want to make sure our students' volume is up. Otherwise, it's going to be a really frustrating experience. And make sure the student is working independently so that we can adapt to meet their specific needs. All right, the last thing that I want to show you is that you actually have the ability as a parent to set up what's called parent access. So when your students log in, this is an example of the bottom of the K2 student environment. Right here, and I will actually draw a box around it for you, it says set up parent access. So if you log in on your device or theirs, you click set up parent access, and then you follow the steps. you're going to need to link their account to your email address. And when you do that, you actually get what's called a family dashboard. That family dashboard gives you a lot of helpful information if you're wondering where your child is in terms of their standards progression or progress, their standards proficiency. If you're wondering how many lessons they've completed that week or how much time they've spent on DreamBox, you can actually find this out without emailing the teacher. You log into your family dashboard and it's going to tell you. You can see right here how much time your student has spent in DreamBox and how many minutes. Now, I will tell you, this is not necessary for your student being a great DreamBox student, a great DreamBoxer, as we like to call them. This is kind of an additional layer if you're really curious about your students' progress and where DreamBox has them and what they're working on. You can certainly set up your family dashboard. I will review really quickly because I want to make sure that everybody understands how to do that. Your student has to be logged into their account. And in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little link that says Set Up Parent Access. What this does is it creates a family account for you. So you're going to put in your name, your email, and then you will be able to log into your family account and you will be able to access all of these different pieces of information about your student. One of my favorite things about having a parent dashboard set up is that I select that I want to receive email notifications from DreamBox. So DreamBox will actually send me messages when my student earns certificates, when my student basically masters new content. So it might say, her name's Maddie. It might say, Maddie has mastered numbers 1 to 10. Here's what she's been working on in DreamBox, and here's something that you can practice at home. You know, counting 1 to 10 objects that you find in your drawers, or, you know, find 10 things around the house and count them. So DreamBox does give you ideas for how you can support their learning at home, and I really, really enjoy getting those notifications. If you think you would enjoy having that insight into your students' learning, you can absolutely set up their family dashboard. And yes, the link is available on an iPad. You will still click the same thing. All right, so I want to know if you have any questions. We tried to keep it brief today because we know that your time is valuable. We appreciate you logging in at 5 o'clock when it's a busy time for your family. And we wanted to leave the last 5 minutes open to see if you had any specific questions, any specific needs that we could support you with. Feel free to take yourselves off of mute or drop any of the questions in the chat box like you've been doing.
So how many levels or lessons, I guess, it's included in each program?
Great question. So there are thousands of lessons. And when you think about the levels, so if you have a second grade student, even though they're a second grader, they could be working on kindergarten lessons, first grade lessons, third grade lessons. It really depends on where DreamBox is recognizing that student is working. So it's very fluid and very flexible. One thing I love about DreamBox is that right now my daughter is working on filling in some unfinished learning she had from kindergarten, especially with school closure. Where our students are experiencing a lot of learning loss because we've all been pretty disconnected for the last 6 months. So she's working on some standards at a kindergarten level. And then in other areas, she's working on first grade lessons because in those mathematical domains and standards, she's a little bit stronger. So DreamBox is recognizing this for your student, and it's going to pull your student either back or forward or keep them at their curricular grade level. But there's thousands of lesson opportunities. Does that help? I think it was Karen who asked that question.
Yes, thank you.
Of course. And Carol, I am sorry. I thought, oh, thank you, Deara. I spoke wrong. I thought that you were able to set it up on the iPad, but it needs to be on a computer. Thanks for asking, and thank you, Deara, for clarifying. All right, what other questions do you have? How can we support you as parents? You have a lot of parents on the line. You have a lot of former educators and people that just want to help. And we want to make sure that everybody walks away excited to get their student on DreamBox. We also want you knowing that it's a really fantastic program that's research-based, that is independent. So your students shouldn't need your help to complete the lessons. We want them independently working. It should be easy to access, and they should be really excited and engaged by it. If you don't have any questions and you don't want to hang around for the second half of today, which is the Spanish portion, you are free to go. You can always email our support team, or I will. Probably emailing support is probably the best way to go, because we can log your questions as they relate to the district. It's support@dreambox.com. Perfect. Deara just dropped it in there. We are working with, oh, thanks, Sharon. I see you have a little clap or a wave. We work with your educators. We're training your child's teachers monthly, and we are just really excited to be in this partnership with the district. And thank you all for joining today. I love your little reactions that you're using. Oh, thanks, Pam. That's awesome. And, I agree. My daughter started in kindergarten last year, and I love seeing that number sense grow. And just, I think the way that she looks at the world in terms of numbers numerically has changed since she's been on DreamBox. And as a mom, it's really, really neat to see, because I didn't love math as a student. And so I love that my daughter is learning to love math and learn that she can be good at it and that she can do hard things by playing these DreamBox lessons. So thank you so much for sharing that feedback. I love it. Thanks, Elise. Yes, Ugo, it's awesome. We appreciate all of you and all that you're doing, because I know that your students, your children, your your parents and learning guardians of a lot of kids, and they are in your homes until at least February. So thank you for everything you're doing, because I know this is a very stressful time, and we appreciate you putting forth the effort to get them logged into DreamBox. All right, and let us know if anybody is staying on the line and hanging out for the Spanish portion of today. Between 5:30 and 6, we're going to be doing the same exact presentation, but in Spanish.